Marhaba, once again, hello to all our brothers and sisters around the world who have, we hope, an increasing interest in the welfare of the Palestinian people living in Gaza, the West Bank, Jerusalem under Israeli apartheid. Today is Monday, October 10th, 2022. I'm American historian and writer Jack Dempsey, living in Crete these days. And my colleague here is Muhammad Ismael, who lives in Deir el-Balah in the Gaza territory. He's been there, enclosed in there for 14 years. His family was banished out of their native village called Shaphir more than 3 decades ago, a long time ago. And his beautiful 3 children have never known freedom. That's all you can really say about their situation. But of course, there's always more. And we're hoping that people will help us to keep the conversation going, to keep the pressure on all the governments in the world that support this terrible injustice called apartheid run by the state of Israel. Last time in a program on September 20th called Palestinian Unrest in Gaza, which is at YouTube, we included a sample letter that might help people to contact their own government representatives, because this is one of the most important things people can do nowadays. There's almost no hope, almost a total impasse in negotiations between the Israeli government and the different Palestinian groups that are fighting for their rights, their equality, some stake in their land. And we hope that you'll go to that 9:20 on YouTube, Palestinian Unrest in Gaza, to take a look at what a short but pungent letter to your representative in whatever country that you live in might be useful to you, to try to clarify that it is our government support that makes this possible, this terrible injustice, and sustains it overall for decade after decade. With Muhammad today, we're going to be talking about some of the economic situations that appertain in Gaza right now. And one of the things we try to make clear up front is that, well, today we might do it a little bit differently. That is to say, imagine your home. Think of all the normal services, benefits, resources that you have in your own home, wherever you are around the world. Well, suddenly imagine that there is no drinkable water. Suddenly imagine that there is no or only a third of a day's worth of electricity. Suddenly imagine that it's very difficult for you to even get some decent form of cooking oil so that you can prepare your food. That around you, instead of a thriving community in a city or in the suburbs or whatever it might be, you're surrounded by ruins that your people cannot rebuild. More than that, you're on rations. The average delivery or allowance allowed into Gaza each day is 200 to 250 trucks with food and supplies. That means that 12,500 people must be fed off a single truck. And as soon as you do the math, you know this is not possible. This is intentional, slow genocide by hunger. And most of all, for all the inconveniences that a lack of water or electricity, etc., might leave you, you're in a prison. You can't just get up and leave. You're in a prison for no reason to anything to do with your own behavior whatsoever. So my brother Muhammad today was wishing to talk about some of the economic things that relate to the seasons in Gaza. One is the beginning of the school year, and one is the olive oil harvest, the harvesting of olive fruits from the trees and the pressing it at the local olive oil press for the farmers. I think, Muhammad, you said you have about 8 trees, and you and your family group and some friends and even your young, beautiful son came out to help out with the work. Can you talk a little about the olive harvest there in Gaza this year?
Thank you, brother, for this opportunity. I am happy to be talking again to the followers and friends from all over the world. Here in Gaza, annually, we have the harvest of olive trees in October. Most of people are preferring to make it during the second half of October, between 10 October and 30. The harvest this year is good. if you want to speak about quality and the quantity. Comparing to last year, this year we have a better season. Yes.
And you said that the quantity is good, and this quantity from about 8 trees worth run through the local press will mostly sustain you and your family, excuse me, for about a year until the next harvest. But this year was a little different. How was that?
Yes, this year I gained a good quantity, but I used to distribute some of my oil. So many people, my neighbors, some of my friends, even some strangers who I didn't know before used to ask me to lend them or to give them some little bottles. So I used to distribute some of my oil. Of course, this will affect on my annual quantity, but I used to share this painful situation with those people who told me that they cannot have even one glass or one small bottle of oil because they are living inside the slums of the camps. They haven't even 1 meter to plant a tree inside it. Their houses are crowded inside the camp, inside the refugee camp, living in a very narrow slums. So they cannot have the opportunity of having trees and harvesting these trees. I used to distribute about 1/3 of my harvest this year.
Well, I'm sure that every single drop of that precious and irreplaceable olive oil is more than appreciated, Muhammad. And I can only say that I'm very proud of you for your generosity with your neighbors who are in such terrible need. You've been telling me a little bit too that, well, things, as we already know, get worse there all the time, because even Israeli policy seems determined even to destroy your ability to take care of yourself, to feed yourself. The water is no good for your gardens. It's also no good for your health. It's just one example. And now Hamas, which does not allow free elections, which does nothing for the Palestinian people, but apparently bring on more destruction with every year, they also put a new wrinkle into the olive harvest this year, didn't they?
Yes, brother. This year we are suffering.
I'm afraid your audio has stopped, Muhammad. I see you, but I do not hear you.
This year, when we took our harvest,
There.
the olive press.
Muhammad, can you start over because your audio stopped for a moment? This is a function, by the way, for our audience of how difficult it is to get a good signal out of Gaza. We're on Zoom. Muhammad, you said that, you said that Hamas had brought a new situation to the public use of the olive press this year. Please begin.
Yes, this season when we went to the olive press to press our harvest, we got astonished that Hamas put the new taxes over the olive presses, and we have to pay like $170 US dollars for each metric ton. And you know, for the people of Gaza, it's a very, very expensive amount of money.
Yes.
So people got nervous and angry because they cannot pay such high taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why so many people expressed their sadness and their anger from Hamas. Always they are creating new taxes.
Yes, and they give nothing in return. We should be clear about that. Most of the Palestinian people feel that Hamas really does nothing whatsoever for them to help them, to bring them forward, and yet they don't even bother to explain why this new tax on the use of the olive press.
As usual, they doesn't justify their decisions to make new taxes. Always they doesn't explain for people. So since so many years ago, right now, it became like a usual situation for us that every year we have an increasing types of taxes, and I don't know how people are going to survive in the coming years. Maybe in the coming years they are going to put the new taxes over the air, over the oxygen and the air, so you cannot breathe without paying money and taxes for them.
Yes, as we mentioned, as I know from some of my own fields of study, the American Indians, they often have a saying that says, "Well, why not sell the air? Why not charge people just to breathe? If you're going to rob them one way or another, why not begin charging them to breathe the air?" And I have a feeling that if they could, they would. And we're talking actually about Hamas, that these are the politicians and business leaders. Can you describe the people that are doing this kind of injustice a little bit clearer for the audience, Muhammad?
Brother, all the voices which are speaking from Gaza and from West Bank, most of them always are accusing the Israeli occupation to be responsible over our suffering and over our problems. I am something different. For me, as Muhammad, always when I want to talk, I used to talk frankly, without hesitation. I have to say the truth, only the truth. For me, always I say that we are suffering from two opponents, two enemies. In one hand, we have the Israeli occupation, and in the other hand, we have the Palestinian corruption for those rulers, whether PA or Hamas. Uh, Also here in Palestine and in Gaza, we are suffering from Hamas and from PA, because they are taking high taxes, but on the other hand, we doesn't receive any kind of service, any kind of service. So can you imagine how our life would be in Gaza?
No, I don't think most people can at all. And that's part of what drives you and me together, to try to express week by week what is going on, the downward, endlessly bottomless trajectory of the Palestinian people's sufferings within the confines of Gaza and within the confines of the West Bank and Jerusalem as well. Back in May, there were some political events that erupted in violence as a response to many arrests of so-called militants or so-called terrorists who are really activists trying to help their communities. And this intifada was called the Unity Intifada. Do you think that there will be any continuing energy from those events of last May, all the arrests in Nablus and Jenin? We talked a little bit about last time. Do you feel that, as some have said, there is a shift in Palestinian consciousness, in Palestinian awareness, that perhaps they have more power than they think, and that they really need to have new elections? What do you think is going to be the issue of all this?
Of course, I think this will happen very, very soon, especially in the West Bank. I think a new wave of violence will erupt in any time. Maybe by the end of this year, maybe in the coming month in November. I think We are going to see this very, very soon. Just the day before yesterday, 4 Palestinians were killed in
Yes.
Jenin, and 3 days ago, other 3 were killed. So every day, every week, we have new clashes in Jenin, the hottest area of clashes between the Israeli army and the Palestinian militants. I think this will happen. I think we will have a new wave of violence, especially in the northern part of West Bank. We speak especially about the area of Jenin.
And you may know or not, but the Western media continue, as they always have, to portray this as a clash of equals, as a conflict over the land. And in fact, what we're talking about is invasion. What happens in Nablus and Jenin and other places, it always comes about, it seems to me, when the Israeli military forces surround these towns, go charging into these towns, charging up to the homes of people they believe are guilty already of crimes. Violence breaks out, not unpredictably, and the people who are killed are Palestinians. I think there was one Israeli soldier killed in the past few days during the last conflict, but we must not think of this as a conflict. It's an invasion and an occupation that is going on.
If you want to talk about the military power, there is no comparison. There is
Of
no
course.
balance between the Israeli army. Israel is a superpower country. They have nuclear weapons. They have a very heavy arsenal of missiles, of air crafts, tanks, etc. I think they are very, very strong army. In contrary, when you speak about the Palestinian militants, you speak about very few and separated guerrilla groups. Their armament is very, very, very simple and primitive. Some guns, some grenades, etc. But if you want to speak about the act of invasion, yes, Palestinians doesn't give up when they have any kind of invasion. They doesn't keep watching. They doesn't give up. They have a philosophy that they should resist, even if they haven't any kind of weapons. They might resist with stones. They can throw stones. They can shout. They can burn some car wheels. They can do anything. This is the Palestinian philosophy of resistance. So this is what happened in West Bank, especially in Nablus and Jenin. Whenever we have an invasion, some vehicles, some tanks, some jeeps are making invasion to a certain street or a certain part in Jenin, directly and immediately people are going to resist this invasion with any means they have, with weapon, with guns, with the stones, with anything. So this is the philosophy of resistance that the Palestinian people used to export to all the people around the world, not this time, but since the first Intifada 3 or 4 decades ago.
Yes, and do you think also that, as you say, I mean, in the couple of years now that you and I have known each other and talked very often and intimately, I have never once heard you say anything except you do not support violence. You do not support violence, that you and most Palestinian people like you simply want their lives back, to walk in equality on the same landscape, to be a part of a larger society where everybody gets along, more or less, as was done in your family's original village of Shaphir and in many other places. Now, do you think that if the violence erupts again, as you think it may soon, That would probably include groups like the Al-Aqsa militia. Do you think that if the violence gets intense enough, and as usual, enough or so many Palestinians die, that perhaps Hezbollah would intervene, because they are one of the few very strong militia groups that really do support the Palestinian cause, right? And that would be
Yeah.
something for Israel to worry.
Yeah. First of all, I will start with the last point in your question. First of all, I think Israel now doesn't fear from Hezbollah. Why? Because Hezbollah became very, 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 very weak if we compare it with the last Lebanon war in 2006. Hezbollah became weak and very weak and destroyed from inside due to its long participation in the Syrian civil war. Hezbollah used to participate in the Syrian civil war, and Hezbollah fought beside the regime of Syria, Al-Assad regime. Hezbollah lost thousands of his fighters, you know. So Hezbollah is not a big danger over Israel. Even if Israel used to pretend in media that Hezbollah is a great power and etc., but I don't think that, because the Israeli leaders, I think from their their minds, they know this fact that Hezbollah became weak and not strong like before. When we want to speak about the military resistance, for me as Muhammad, I say, and always I say, that I believe that I am against all kinds of violent resistance. I am against the violence, but we have to separate between two things. Between the defensive resistance, when you defend your home, your street, your refugee camp, your dignity, your life, you know, and when you make an attack and make something like to you know. So we have to compare between two things. We have to compare between, or we have to separate between the defensive resistance and the other kind of resistance when you make an operation and when you make an assault
Yes.
against civilian targets inside Israel.
Yes.
I am against the latter type of resistance, but I am with the first type of resistance. When someone is coming to invade you, I think you have to defend yourself, and that what happened historically in Paris when the Nazi army used to attack France. The same thing happened in different part of Europe during the expansion of the Nazi army.
Yes, and you make an important distinction, Muhammad. I think that it's one thing to act defensively, but in the Palestinians' case, it's a struggle simply to hold on to what little you have left. Simply to hold on to what little you have left. And then perhaps brigades like Al-Aqsa and other militant armed Palestinian groups, they're thinking that, well, we have nothing to lose because the PA, the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, are not helping us. Our governments are worse than useless. They are so corrupt. We must now take power into our own hands and try somehow to force Israel to make changes. And at least as most of the world, I think, knows, the United Nations has multiple resolutions that find, by a great unanimity of world voting at the UN, that the Palestinians have the right to resist what's happening to them quote, by any means necessary, by any means necessary. So I can only remark once again to stop here, but the immense, immeasurable patience that most of the Palestinian people show, their ability to absorb terrible mistreatment is absolutely remarkable. And I wish the world would take more notice of it and begin to act under their own governments to change the support that makes this possible for Israel.
Yes, yes, brother, of course. Yes. Let me explain something important. I agree with you that the Palestinian militants are defending and are combating with the Israeli army because there is very big gap left by the PA security. Always, PA is playing a very negative role. They doesn't participate. They doesn't defend the Palestinian camps and towns during any attack from the Israeli army. Always they withdraw and go back to their garrison, to their camps, military camps, and they leave the Israeli army face to face against the civilians inside Nablus or Jenin. So I agree with you that this gap, which is left by the PA militants or PA security, etc., this gap is responsible for making this direct clash between the Al-Aqsa troops and etc. with the Israeli army. So we have to blame PA for this negative role. They doesn't participate. They doesn't defend. I think according to the PA constitution, we have so many points in this constitution saying that protecting and saving and defending the Palestinian civilian is the role of the Palestinian Authority, the PA. So they doesn't work according to their institution, which was made after Oslo Agreement. So I agree with you that PA is blamed for this bloody clash. Always we have this bloody clash, and directly whenever the Israeli tanks move, directly we see that PA soldiers are making a withdrawal.
And I think people from the outside too, Muhammad, would benefit from the view that while they may think, well, why don't the Palestinians rise up against these two governments, Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, that do them no good, that do them worse than anything by taking their wealth, interrupting the flow of international aid that comes into the country, unsupervised by any of the donating nations. So they have no idea where this money goes. And it goes into the pockets of the politicians and the leading businessmen and the oligarchs that jack up the prices of everyday foods and needs for the Palestinian people. Many people out there might think, well, why don't they rise up against these two governments and throw them off? But you have pointed out already, the truth is neither Hamas nor the PA would last 3 months politically if they did not have money from outside sources. This is already a foreign operation, another foreign operation against the Palestinians.
Yes, in fact, this is my own hypothesis. I have this kind of hypothesis. I said always that if the international community used to cut the fund and stops funding the PA, and if Turkey and some Muslim countries used to cut funding Hamas only for 3 months, we speak about 90 days. I am sure, very sure, that we will topple the both governments. Both of the powers will collapse. Brother. Yeah.
Yes.
So we have to blame the international community because they are responsible for this bad situation. They are funding the both sides of
Yes.
Palestinian separation. They are funding them, and in the other hand, they doesn't make any kind of monitoring on the money, how Hamas or PA is working with this money. They doesn't make any kind of monitoring. I will say something important for you. People here are starving. They haven't food security. Most of people are securing their meals day by day. If you go to any kitchen randomly in any area in Gaza, you will not find more than one meal, just the meal of tomorrow. You know, if you
And as you've
say,
said, when
yeah,
a person in Gaza has a meal, is lucky enough to have one good meal in the day, the first thing you think about when
exactly.
you finish that meal is, what am I going to do tomorrow?
Exactly. If you take any random kitchen in Gaza, and if you decide to search inside this kitchen, I think you will find very few spoons of sugar, very few glasses of cooking oil. I
Yes.
think you will find maybe 1 kilo or 2 kilos of flour. So everything is you know.
Yes.
But in the other hand, so many politicians, uh, whether in the PA or Hamas, are having real estates in the Gulf countries, in Jordan,
Yeah.
in Egypt, in Turkey, they have resorts, they have buildings, towers, very precious and expensive cars. They
The
have
the money
they
is
have
going
some
somewhere. The money is going
all
somewhere.
of course, and some of them are having like uh, boats, tourist boats,
Of
wandering
course.
in the Mediterranean and Red Sea.
Yeah.
They have very fine life, you know.
Sure. Now,
But in the other hand, the poor people of Gaza, as I told you, they have only one meal, and some of them moves to the coming day without even securing the meal of the day.
yes, and it's not too back there program of ours that you were talking about. I think it was in July. There was a very severe outbreak of COVID cases. 20% of the people in Gaza have been diagnosed with COVID. There was also an upsurge in the number of suicides from sheer despair. Now, as our time goes, Mohammed, I wanted to ask you to mention one other thing for our listeners this week in regard to the seasonal life in Gaza. That is the resumption of school, the return of the children to school. And you said that they are very much, well, half of the population is children in Gaza, 2.5 million people. The kids are heading back to school, but you say they have no supplies, they have very little food. Can you talk a little about that for just a minute or so?
Yes, brother. Just 2 weeks ago, we had the schools opening here in Gaza. Most of people, as you know, are poor and are starving. So when they are sending their children to school, they are sending them with old bags, used notebooks, used books, even used stationery, without money. So, so the child, when he walk in the street and when he look to his left and his right, and he see some goods, some shops. What will be his psychological situation when he doesn't have 1 cent in his pocket, you know? And most of those children are having bad nutrition.
Yes.
If they make the blood test, you will find that their blood is not good. They have very
Anemia.
bad nutrition.
Yes.
They have anemia. They have an anemia, of course. So it's a very, very miserable image, unfortunately.
Well, I'm hoping that everything you've shared with us this week, Muhammad, as always, will motivate people to just take 5 minutes and contact their own political representatives in their own countries, from America to the UK to the European EU to all the countries around the world, even in Iran and Saudi Arabia and other places that purportedly would have an interest in the welfare and help of the Palestinian people. Because, as you said very well 1 or 2 programs ago, the Palestinians are caught in the middle of other people's very dirty games. And that's the way it is. We must have people in the outside countries stop their own governments from continuing to fund this terrible situation. It isn't working, and not only that, it's getting worse by the day, worse by the week.
Yes, brother. All the players are playing cards with our cause, the Palestinian cause. So Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, Turkey, all the surrounding countries, they are looking like players, and our cause is cards. So they are playing cards with our Palestinian cause. Unfortunately, this is the reality of what happened.
And this has a life and death effect for people. So as we close, Muhammad, this next episode, I think we might be up to about 15 of these now. We're hoping week by week that more people will perhaps tune in and learn something solid and particular about your situation. Let us leave them together, Muhammad, with a call, a cry from Gaza to say, please contact your own governments, phone, letter, email, whatever it takes, and tell them you demand that the Palestinians be treated like human beings. Anything you want to add?
Yeah. Thank you, brother. Also, I add my voice to yours. I ask people to try just to do anything they can do to affect on their governments, to ask their senators, their parliament members. They have to ask them just to try to make some sort of a change. I think here in Palestine, we are in a big seek of justice. All what we want is justice. We doesn't need anything more than justice. Thank you, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Muhammad, and I will look forward to our next conversation, my friend. Be well, stay safe, and take good care of that beautiful young family of yours, okay?
Okay. Thank you, brother.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.